This episode of the Drywall Podcast is dedicated to the memory of Joseph B. Goldman. Hello, and welcome to a wet and sticky episode of the Drywall Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Harmon. With us today, I'm very excited to welcome Lee Goldman to the show. Lee has an extensive background, and I knew early on in this interview, this was not going to be just one episode. It was around 2004 when he dove headfirst into the drywall industry and maybe had a lightning bolt of an idea.
Right. If I could find a way, which I now knew that I could, once I saw that machine with the tape,
yeah,
which had been in my factory also,
yeah,
but I never, it was so. All of a sudden, I just saw the tape coming out, and I saw.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And so you see these TV shows where you go back and how the So this is how the thought was coming.
The lightning bolt. That was a lightning bolt moment for you.
Yeah, but then I said, oh, now I got to sell it.
But before we can get into all that, we have to take a long stroll into Lee's dense history in the fashion industry, not only getting a frontline education in business from his father, Joseph B. Goldman, but also working directly with Ralph Lauren himself. Part 1 takes us on a roller coaster of successes and failures and will leave you eager for more. I'm very excited and honored to kick off the 2024 sponsorship series with Columbia Tools as our January and February sponsor. This is the second time Columbia has sponsored the Drywall Podcast, and I'm super grateful to them for that. Stay tuned throughout January for some exciting ice bath giveaways, all culminating into a special Rocky Mountain adventure happening at the end of February, where I'll be interviewing 2 surprise guests. Columbia Tools is a family-owned and operated business that's been rocking the drywall finishing scene for over 4 decades. Manufactures commercial-grade tools in Canada using cutting-edge machinery and all North American materials. Catch my 2-part interview with Aaron and Elliot of Columbia Tools, episodes 23 and 26, as well as my live interview with Bernie St. James, their dad and founder of Columbia Tools, on episode 54. You can also catch my full interview with Bernie on our Instagram page. Do you have a question or a concern or a comment about the Drywall Podcast? Maybe you would like to be a guest on the Drywall Podcast, or you have a suggestion of somebody that you think would be a great interview for the Drywall Podcast. I would love to hear from you about that. But for now, Lee Goldman, inventor of the Wet and Stick, on the 82nd episode of the Drywall Podcast. Let's get into it. Said by Lee Goldman, wet and stick technology is similar to the idea used in water-activated wallpaper, except for we had to create an adhesive that set up quickly and began to grip in seconds, allowing the taper to string without missing a beat, says Goldman. The outcome is quick, dry adhesive that absorbs into the face paper of the wallboard. This allows wet and stick to expand and contract as the finished construction settles. We have Lee Goldman with us on the Drywall Podcast.
Okay.
Lee has come up in a few conversations with my interviews with Kevin Bush, Adventures in Drywall. Also, I interview Adam Luce and also Wolfgang. All 3 of those.
Did you ever talk to Heath?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about maybe doing some fresco and having a cool adventure in Montana. But that's a different podcast. That's a different one.
Well, no, I just happened to talk to both Kevin and Heath yesterday.
Oh, okay, cool.
It's like I haven't talked to Kevin or Heath in years. And
The Drywall Podcast brings people together, Lee.
obviously,
So going back to the story, this wet and stick thing kept coming up. I'm like, that's a pretty good idea. You just get the tape wet and you throw it on the wall. Like that's way better than running it through a tube and all of this. And Kevin was like, well, you should interview Lee, and he talked to you, and then I reached out to you. And so now we finally have the inventor of the wet and stick, Lee Goldman. But your story goes much deeper than that, and we'll get into all of that shortly. I like the introduction, though, with the little excerpt. And you can find out more about these articles on Walls and Ceilings magazine and probably other places, because you developed the wet and stick and you also developed this saturator tool. Pretty
Blaze
cool.
Blocker and
Blaze Blocker. That's the other one. It's like, what the hell's Blaze Blocker?
And a guy came to me with an idea about screen repair tape, and I perfected it for him. And actually I have it downstairs in my basement, but yeah, I don't know what he wound up doing with it. I had the rights for a while, but unfortunately he couldn't get out of his own way. Between his investors, I just said, well, I got enough going on. Plus, the other thing that we did was we really elevated the idea of using spark perforated wallboard tape initially.
Say that again. What perforated?
Spark perforated wallboard tape.
Okay, what does that mean?
So the joint tape, regular joint tape, just any good one like USG, Lafarge, any of these names, National.
Has a perforation.
It has a crease down the center.
Yeah.
So what they do is they take this big roll of paper from the paper mill, and it's actually the best grade is from International Paper. It's a specialized paper that is actually the trees are from your neck of the woods. Well, I would buy these rolls. There were about 60 inches in length and I think it was about 50 inches in diameter. So this was a couple tons, or no, this was a ton.
Okay.
And we had these machines that would take them. But what most people would do is they'd have these creasers, and they would crease it and slit it, rewind it, and staple it, put their little sticker on it, and send it out.
Okay.
So when I looked into this is a long story about buying this company, I saw that these guys had these sparkers, and what they would do is these sparkers would put miniature microscopic holes in it. You could hold it up to the light and see the holes in it.
Yeah.
And this would allow the mud to have a better grip.
Penetrate the paper.
Right. So not only was the paper perfect, but these sparkers were great. They were an added feature. And initially, from my understanding, now I'm only doing this since 2004, was only doing this in 2004. My understanding, the original paper that was used when drywall back in the 40s or 50s, I guess 40s, when they had this boom of government housing, and they started using wallboard. I don't want to use anybody's name, but
sure,
wallboard in government housing, all this tape had specifications to have spark perfect, but then it went away.
Why did they have to have the spark technology?
They just thought that would be the safety to keep the construction tight.
Better adhesion.
Supposedly.
Peace of mind, maybe peace of mind.
Evidently, I guess because that's the first guy that they come out with it, that's what they had.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, fast forward as years went by, they perfected. I don't know if they even used this same paper that they use now.
Yeah.
I wasn't around back then.
Yeah.
Gypsum wallboard was a new thing.
Right.
Before that it was plaster. And I want to say it was sometime in the mid to late 40s is when they started using drywall, or drywall was perfected.
Right.
And listen, I'm kind of a student of this, so I don't have all the facts, but I can give you the generalities.
We're all students here on the Drywall Podcast.
Well, yeah, I mean, I come from a foreign. I mean, these hands have trouble tying shoes, much less doing drywall. I saw these machines had these sparkers, but they weren't being used.
Okay.
I saw they also had the people that were running this. I don't know what they really were doing, and I don't know. But I'm just saying there was something going on there. Maybe they were laundering. What, I don't know. But I saw there was an opportunity. I wasn't doing anything at the time. I had a major deal that I was working on that fell apart.
I'm going to push the pause button, Lee. I'm going to push the pause button. We're going to have to establish before we get to this stage in the story. That was like the teaser, really. Very quickly. What I know is that your father worked for Ralph Lauren. Like, I just wanted to get that in it. Wrong. Okay. All right.
So I will tell you, I listened to the podcast.
Okay.
Generally, there's a lot of good stuff.
Okay.
Actually, we're off the mark.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, that's why you're here. We're getting to the bottom of it. I want the facts. I want to know what happened.
So as a young child, my father he owned a little men's shop, and then he went on the road selling goods because he could make more money.
Oh, okay.
No,
all right.
He started shirts and ties. Weird. And that's where he met Ralph Lauren.
Like dress shirts?
Yeah.
Okay. And ties.
Yeah.
That's so cool. You're a tie connoisseur.
I am.
Okay. There's things that Lee Goldman.
I'm actually a throwback. There's not many of us around left that know nice clothing.
Okay.
All right. So, but before you start rolling, or we start, so I dropped out of school, and I had been, when my dad was on the road on the weekends. He and my mom split. My brother and I would go with him to my grandmother's house or his apartment, wherever he happened to be. And we would, when he got a new line to take out on the road, we would take the shirts and put the stickers on so he knew what price and what codes were. So so even at like, I don't know, 14 years old, this is what I was doing. So I was learning about fabrics. I would do the same thing with his neckwear. So my father was so good at selling. And he had wound up having such a great reputation from Virginia through the Carolinas. He was like, he became a legend. Okay. They elevated him to a vice presidency in New York for Eagle shirt makers. Eagle shirt makers brought in this crazy Frenchman named Pierre Cardin and introduced him to the country. Pierre Cardin had this one-size turtleneck that your parents would know about. You might not know about, but it was like all the rage. So if you look back at the old James Bond films or whatever, all the cool guys would be wearing these turtlenecks, ribbed turtlenecks.
Okay. And is that Eagle? Is that the Eagle Outfitters now that we're talking about?
It has nothing to do with them. It's
okay. All right.
They're Eagle shirt makers, 1870 in Quakertown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That's where they're from. Anyway, so he he went there, and because of he had a pulse, and that's what kind of where I got it from him. He had a pulse on what would sell, and he had a grip on that because he had traveled and met all the specialty stores. There was no Bloomingdale's other than 59th Street. There was no Neiman Marcus except in Dallas, Texas. There were all these mom and pop specialty stores, and it was like a men's club. All these guys were loved to dress. They were from the South. Button-down shirts, the Gant collars.
What year? What are we talking? 40s or 50s here?
We're talking 60s.
60s. Okay, and your dad's name, really quick, if you don't mind.
Goldman. Joe Goldman.
Joe Goldman.
He would like to be known as Joseph B. My dad would be sent to go pick out fabrics for this company. The name of the company is irrelevant, but he had, aside from Eagle, he also represented this other company. It's called Berkeley Cravats, but it doesn't matter. Okay. That's where he and Ralph met. because Ralph was picking out picking out fabrics for his first collection that he was going to show Bloomingdale's.
Okay.
Ralph Lauren, nobody knew who Ralph Lauren was. There was no
Right.
polo. It was ties. I think it was ties for Brooks Brothers or some division of another company.
Okay.
All right. This is when Ralph first started. So he and
Yeah.
my dad clicked. They clicked over baseball and they clicked over Frank Sinatra. And I was a
Yeah.
kid. I was just a kid. I mean,
Yeah.
so my dad, I guess this has to be like 1965 or six,
Okay.
somewhere in that. So he and Ralph are talking and they're going back and forth, and every time my dad's in town. My dad would go up for 3 or 4 days and then come back down. We lived in Virginia Beach.
Okay.
And Virginia Beach, Virginia, and he
Okay.
would come back down back down. And in those days, the airline flights were pretty cheap. I remember that there was a price war, and we would, once we got in business, I lived down there. My father lived down there. We would commute 5 days, for 5 days. We'd stay up in New York, come back. I think it was $29 round trip.
Was Ralph Lauren in New York at the time?
Yeah. Ralph
Okay.
was living in New York. So that's where the story starts. So my dad, then, I don't know if you've ever heard of Gant shirt makers. But Gant shirt makers are the ones that were famous for the button downs, the blue button down, that use Oxford cloth shirts.
How do you spell that?
Gant. So you'd have to go back in time, but they were the things. You had Bass Weegians, you had Gant shirts.
Okay.
That was the thing. And the Gant shirts were known for having this loop on the back of the shirt. So when you were going to high school, if you had a Gant shirt on, the girls would come and try to rip your loop off, and they would collect loops.
Really?
It was
That's
a thing.
cool. That's
That
cool.
was the thing. We still had rotary phones, but anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so fast forward. I'm now, my father's he's starting up Gant Boys Wear division, and Annie Hall is playing in the theaters, and all the women are wearing boys' sport coats. So his division is hotter than a firecracker. I'd left school and
What's the
started
connection between Annie Hall and were you guys targeting the movies to market your fashions? No, not yet.
No, it just happened.
Okay. It just happened.
Ralph Lauren started his women's wear line, and he furnished all the clothes for Annie Hall.
Okay.
But his sport coats, let's say they were $500 a piece.
Yeah.
Gant's boys, which women could wear, figured out they could wear, and had all the similar look, were like, I don't know, $100, let's say.
Okay.
So all these women were buying boys' stuff because she had this women's men's look.
Different cut.
No, but they had a women's men's look at the time.
Okay.
Men were
All
dressing
right.
like they would be wearing the same thing like I'm wearing now. They would be wearing a button-down shirt, a shirt over it, or a sport coat over it, and jeans or corduroys or flannel slacks. It was a different look at that time.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm working at a company called Britches of Georgetown in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
They were like they were Ralph Lauren's best customer. All right, it was a fine men's store, but we also had a Western wear division. We also had an outdoor division. So we had all these stores, and I'm the buyer.
Okay.
So I'm coming up to New York. I'm buying accessories, belts, leather goods, hats, scarves, sweaters, dress shirts. So I'm running into Ralph Lauren. I'm running into Alexander Julian. All these guys you probably know, Perry Ellis. I knew all these guys. Some are dead,
Yeah.
Anyway, So my father's 50th birthday, which I guess it was in 19, I don't know, somewhere in his late 70s. Somebody threw him a surprise birthday party. I don't even know if it was his 50th, but whatever number it was. He comes to me and says, he's having, we're sitting on the beach smoking cigarettes and drinking scotch.
Okay.
It's he, my brother, and my uncle. And he says, I want to talk to you guys. I can't be doing this anymore. They're not giving me my due. And I know you guys know what you're up to. Lee, I know that you're in the accessory business. Arthur, his brother was actually making belts for some company in Rochester. I think it was called Salvatore, whatever. So he says, why? He says, Ralph approached me on the street. He said, what's up? He happened to be in the same building that my father was this particular day. Saw him on the street. My dad knew not only Ralph, but he knew Ralph's president very well. I mean, they were either drinking buddies or social slights. Ralph wasn't a drinker, but my father and the president of Polo were fast friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, Ralph says, well, why don't you do something with me? He says, I asked you to be my partner when I first started Polo and you turned me down. Yeah. Why don't you? And my father said, yeah, I was real smart about that one, wasn't I?
You know what? I like Polo. I like Polo pants, and
you would have liked them really nice, really when back in my day, in the 80s. Because there wasn't all this. Well, it was just really finely tailored, great stuff. I still have some stuff that I wish I could wear.
Right.
But I've gotten to be a fat boy, so I can't fit into them. I got stuff you can't believe.
I'll bet. I
just don't want to part with it. Anyway, so my father says, I spoke to Ralph. Why don't we make some belts for Ralph? And see what we can do, and think about it. Let's talk about it in a week. Now here I am, this big deal.
At this point, Joseph hasn't manufactured yet.
He's never done anything but sell and work and run a sales force.
Why do you think what's the attraction to manufacturing a product versus just continuing to do what he was doing? Where's the attraction there? More money?
Well, I honestly, I think that he was frustrated always working for somebody and really not getting his due.
Right.
And always being, he was making a really nice salary. He had great expenses.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, man.
But felt like he was hitting a dead end. And I think that if I remember correctly, Gant, the company he worked for, was in play to be purchased. And all of a sudden he saw all his hard work getting this boys division.
Okay. All right.
Going down.
He's walking in the shadows of giants, like these pre-giants, Essentially, he's in the background and he wants to make his mark.
It's not that I don't think he wanted the spotlight. He just wanted security.
Okay.
All right. So my dad's father died when he was like 18 or 17, and he had to leave school to be able to help his mom. Okay. And he helped raise my uncle.
All right.
And so he was a working dog, and they didn't have much of anything.
Yeah.
They were depending on this 17-year-old to make money to feed my grandmother and her other son.
Right.
And I believe my great-grandmother was living with him at the time.
Okay.
So there wasn't a lot to go around. I mean, we were poor.
Yeah. Okay. Let's continue the story along. You've got your dad's like, we're going to do belts for Ralph Lauren.
I felt like I was the bee's knees as far as accessory buyers. You probably have heard of a guy by the name of Joe Abood with Men's Warehouse. He was a designer that worked for Ralph. Joe Abood used to buy for a store called Louis of Boston. in Boston.
Okay.
I worked for Britches of Georgetown. We were rivals. I mean, it was like crazy,
Yeah.
but we weren't even in the same area, but we were also rivals that respected one another. And we would go out and have a few drinks together. And
Okay.
then we would play, and sometimes we'd get in card games together. Because you got to remember, we're single guys up in the city trying, just we're working our ass off during the day and partying at night.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
think it was a different time, kind of like Mad Men,
exactly.
you didn't take care of yourself. You guys were out
It-
there. It's a man's world.
it-
You guys were just living the lap of luxury, essentially. I mean, having a
and
ball, I would assume.
we were working our ass off, but we were beasts. I
Yeah.
mean, you got to remember, we're 20s, in our 20s,
Yeah.
we're rocking and rolling, baby. And
In a market, men's fashion essentially was new. Not, I mean,
well,
it's been around, but maybe not as much in the United States.
so the story about Ralph.
Mhm.
Everybody was wearing these small little skinny ties that you saw Don Draper wear. That look where everybody was buying their shirts from J.C. Penney or National Shirt Shops or wherever, and he took and made those Van Heusen shirts or whatever. He made them luxurious, really fine cotton, really nice thick wide ties that had some kind of life to them instead of this solid black or blue or burgundy or a couple of stripes. He took upholstery fabric and started making ties. He
Okay.
he did paisleys. He did intarges. He did brushed silk. Anyway, I don't want this to all to be about the fashion, but Ralph was the guy that made it fun to get dressed for men
Okay.
instead of you wanted to have the right belt, you wanted to have the right tie, and they were all people would line up at the store I worked at on Saturday morning waiting for the doors to open to see what was new because they knew we would be putting out new stock Friday night, and it was like a fucking stampede.
Okay.
The guys were like piranhas. Their
Yeah.
wives or girlfriends were like piranhas. They
Yeah.
would come in. If you worked at Britches, they just wanted to know what you could tell them what they needed to wear so they could get you know,
Very cool. And if you're listening too, we're all going to round this out back to Drywall. I think this story is interesting. I love the entrepreneurial spirit anyways. I could do a show just on entrepreneurs, like, trust me. This story is cool. That's why I wanted to interview you. The fact that you made that you were in this realm and you transitioned to this weird wet and stick idea is fascinating to me, and hence the thick background on Lee Goldman. And as a precursor, I already said to Lee, this might be a two-parter. So if your story's getting long-winded or something, and I feel like it's not interesting, I'll butt in and we'll cut out. But I all this is interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting to our listeners as well. So go ahead.
okay. So
This is back when you're in the belts, yet or no? This is still kind of, we're right around that area where you're
we're just in.
establishing your relationship with Ralph.
Well, I had met Ralph as a buyer. Ralph would show this was a time when Ralph Lauren had 8 employees. And he would actually be in the showroom and show the buyers, particularly my store, the store I worked for, Britches of Georgetown, which I think was doing, they've come alive again and were doing the Monday Night Football wardrobes and stuff, but recently. But enough of that. My store was their number one customer at that time. And we're talking 74, 75. And this is the same time that my father, when he started the Gamp Boys, was taking off. So I would see my dad I'd go and do my work during the day, and at night I had an apartment, or the company had an apartment, and I would meet my dad for dinner and drinks, whatever, and I got to know all the guys that he was rubbing shoulders with, and it was
Yeah.
like I was going to school and didn't even know it.
Would you say that your dad was sort of honing your skill, like he was nurturing your chops?
I think I think he recognized I had the bug,
Okay.
and he enjoyed having me, and I enjoyed having him being there,
Yeah.
being around. He introduced me to Howard Cosell one night.
Okay. All right.
Unbelievable. I mean, Buddy
And to
Rich.
our younger listeners, Howard Cosell is a famous sports broadcaster
Yeah,
back in the day.
you go back to YouTube and watch he and Muhammad Ali get into these interviews and play around with one another. And he was
Yeah.
big on Monday Night Football when it
Yeah.
first started.
Would you say that you and your dad had a close relationship? Were you close with your dad?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. My dad passed away January of 2021.
Okay.
Not of COVID, but and
That's
I
pretty
got
recent. That's pretty, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yes, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's 3 years. 3 years to 3 years ago, Saturday. Uh,
He would have liked this. He would have liked this interview.
I'm sure he would, and he would have liked he if he were still here, he would we'd get him on. I'd figure a way of getting him on because
Yeah.
you want
Oh
to talk about a guy
yeah.
that had stories. Shoot, he had the best. But anyway,
I'll bet.
well,
I'll bet.
I could talk about my dad forever.
Yeah.
But he and I, yeah, I don't know if he was. I don't know initially if he was grooming me, but he certainly made a lot of introductions. And I think he was, I think at first he was testing me.
Okay.
He wanted to see, I think he wanted to see the hunger. I think he wanted to see the ethics. I think he wanted to see just how I handled myself.
Yeah,
Uh,
was ethics a big part of his story and yours coming into this? Like you wanted to make the best products, you wanted to make quality products, all of that stuff.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
My father on his gravestone, uh, there's a saying that my grandmother used to always say to us, and he said it all the time: "Do right and fear no one." And
Love it.
that says it all. Do right and fear no one. And I think actually Jesus said that, believe it or not, but
Huh.
or something along those lines. But that was that was something that even goes back to my childhood. I remember when I had some of the most difficult moments was telling my father I did something wrong
Sure.
before he could find out.
Mm,
And I remember one time, and I don't want to go through the whole incident, but I remember one time I said he was away. He was at a dinner with his wife and friends, and um, I called him up because I had to tell him right then. Dad, remember you said do right and fear no one? Well, I didn't do right, and I'm scared shitless of you right now, or something to that effect.
yeah.
So
I love it. Love
that,
it. Good
that's
stuff. We're giving a nod to Joseph B. Goldman on this show. Very very cool because we all came from somewhere. Our fathers are a huge influence. I have an 8-year-old right now, and so I'm absorbing all of this information.
yeah. So yeah, fatherhood is something big.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
certainly big to me, and as you will find out. But
Do you have kids?
I do, I do. I
Okay,
have two two girls and a boy, and I have a stepdaughter.
okay,
That we're a little estranged right now. The stepdaughter
yeah,
due to the fracture of the marriage, but
sure,
um, my daughters are living in Virginia Beach.
okay,
My oldest is married. She's got a wonderful husband, Liza
beautiful,
and Dave. And they have two kids, Cam and Callie, that were Dave's from a previous marriage. And they're trying to have their own. And they have a lovely house at the beach and
sure.
a lovely life. and there's great kids.
Okay.
My youngest daughter, Aviana, is with her beau Harrison, and they set up shop, and I don't know what the future holds, but they seem to be very happy.
Okay.
Um, and then my son Sam, I would say Sam is following in the fashion. Sam
Cool.
Sam is a big story. He had a disease called primary sclerosing cholangitis,
Okay.
and it is a disease that attacks your biliary tree. And Sam has had 2 liver transplants,
Eh,
and he had his colon removed.
okay.
And he was a very, very sick boy that my wife and I almost lost him a couple of times.
Yeah.
That's a whole story in itself.
Yeah. Tough stuff.
I'm very big on organ donation. So if you're listening out there, uh, sign up and be an organ donor. You could save somebody's life. This one woman that my son got the second liver transplant saved 7 people that I know of. Well, I know that I've heard of. And I don't know if you ever heard of the lady who had her face ripped by the face
Yeah.
ripped off by the chimpanzee.
Yep.
I'm not supposed to know this. I can't tell you how I found out about it, but she got a face, and I think she both her hands, and my son got the liver from the same donor.
Wow.
And he is my monkey boy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
It's very,
fantastic.
very serious stuff. And
Yeah.
that is a podcast in its own. But I don't want to go there because it's part of the reason why I'm not making the tape, or I would say that's part of it.
Well,
I
I
we
think
should,
it's good intel. We'll circle back. We'll circle back.
um,
Okay, let's go back to
so,
Ralph Lauren sees something in Lee Goldman.
yeah, that's true. That's true. I am tenacious when it comes to product development, and
Okay.
I have a very I did. I don't know if it's still there, but I always had a very strong fashion sense. And I also, like my father, and I believe my brother had it too, we had a gut feeling of what would sell within this market
Okay.
of that we were in. We were in the updated traditional field. We weren't into the disco stuff. We weren't into the, goth or grunge.
Yeah.
We had adaptations on some of those things, but when it came to dressing as a gentleman
Yes.
and fine haberdashery, we were there's nobody better than us. We were
Okay.
great. I have to
Okay.
say we hit it, and we hit it with Ralph. And
Okay.
we were all evolving. We were one of Ralph's first licensees. Now, for those of you that don't know it, being a licensee means that you're part of the family, but your business is independent.
Okay.
So we had our own company, which was called Campaign,
Okay.
and we had a division called Polo Ralph Lauren Leather Goods, and we made belts, wallets, desk sets, gift items. Uh, Braces, which were suspenders when they were hot in the 80s. I mean, I have a box I could do a whole story just on braces.
Yeah.
People thought I was nuts when I sat down with Ralph. I said, this is going to be hot. I know it's going to be hot. And we started taking his neckwear, his silk, and making them into the braces. And we would take alligator and some of our fine leathers and make all the attachments. It was like crazy. I can't tell you how many we sold. And then Ralph came up with the idea of making taking dog collars that he's seen in England and turning them into belts. So these people in Liverpool used to weave hemp into making rope for the sailing for the freight industry, ocean freight.
Yeah.
fishing nets, all this stuff were made by home workers, and we gave them leather to start making our belts. And we would do braided belts like you could not believe. And
Yeah.
all the braided belts you see out there now are knockoffs of things that we did.
You were the first to do braided belts.
Not the first to do any braided belts, but we were the first to take that braided belt and make it into a series of all kinds of braids.
Okay.
We had a cobra braid. We had a herringbone braid that everyone has now. Before it was, I remember Canterbury Belts had this braided belt, but it wasn't anything like what we were doing. But it was a braided belt. So I'm not going to tell you that we invented braided belts. We just took it to a level that everybody had to have our braids.
Okay.
We took sterling silver buckles and tips and put it on our braided belts, and it became like a fashion item that like women had to have it. We did it in 3-inch braids and had these braided buckles and all this crazy stuff. It was nuts.
Yeah.
We took alligator. We took American alligator as soon as it became unendangered, because it had been endangered, I guess, from like 60 to 78 or 79, and it became a fashion item, and we were the biggest sellers and users of alligator skins in the world at one time.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody sells at the time $400 belts like they're gumballs. It was insane. I mean, it was quite intricate to make them right, to match everything up. But it was like I was interviewed by the Wall Street Journal about crocodile, the difference between crocodile, alligator, where we got them, how we did it, I remember it was in such demand that we actually, I flew to Italy to bring back a load of belts on an airplane because we couldn't get them fast enough.
Okay.
Yeah, for one of Ralph's fashion shows, I think that was. So I remember his flagship store on 72nd and Madison. I remember we did all-nighters getting that store ready for its opening. So it was like all hands on deck. I didn't work for Ralph. I just did it because that was what needed to be done.
Yeah.
And I wasn't alone. Not just Lee Goldman, but it was like I was the president of my company. And I'm doing work that I'm standing right next to the same people that are, stock boys.
And the misconception for people that are successful is that it comes easily. But the reality is that I think that work ethic that was instilled in maybe the boomers, older generation, and there's still work ethic now. It's shifted a bit, but that work ethic is what enables people to become successful. There are very few people, I think, that are successful that don't know how to work hard. You got to.
Times, and I was flying all over the world doing, research, development, getting samples for whether it's fashion shows or the new lines. It was a process. And we didn't have fax machines until the 80s. We didn't have CAD. We didn't have
cell phones.
We didn't have PDF files that we could just send to somebody. We had these little drawings that, we'd have to send them over in envelopes overnight. There was no Federal Express.
Right.
We're talking about people that used to go, the buyers for Brooks Brothers used to go on month-long trips to Europe on the friggin' ship.
Yeah.
Way back.
I love it.
So we did advance. I did fly on the Concorde a couple of times for emergency meetings or whatever. But you can't. I wish we had the technology then that's out there now. We would have.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Well, and there's a lot of people doing it now too, though. So it's a lot more competitive.
You know what? They missed a step. They missed the step of maintaining quality that people could afford without being ostentatious. I got to tell you, I look at product. I'm a product guy. I
Okay.
look at product, and it filtered right through to the hardware division,
Yeah,
hardware
yeah.
and drywall and paints and whatnot. There's a void of quality, and people that have the integrity
Yes.
uh, of keeping to their principles. Instead of selling out
Yes.
for the buck. So
I'm going to build a business just to sell it versus I'm building the business for the sake of this is really fun and I enjoy this and I want to make it as good as possible. And I care about the label and I care about customer service. Customer service now, it's like if you message me on Instagram, text me, I'll answer your text. Give me a phone call, email. You can get a hold of the owner of any business anytime.
I wouldn't sell a customer over the phone. I'd be on a plane in front of him.
Right.
And we would be, it was all about relationships. You built relationships. It wasn't about, everybody could take somebody out to dinner, but you have to be able to relate to people. You have to be able to get inside what they want. And if they
Yeah.
don't know what they want and you think you know what they want, then you got to be able to explain to them that they want it.
I love it. And well, and in drywall though, it's kind of antiquated in that respect because it's such a stifled industry. Fashion, you've got these new ideas. Oh, this guy's coming out with this guy's coming out with that. There's a little bit more open-mindedness. Drywall is just like, that's new. No thanks. We're making $1 million doing it this way. Why would we want to
You're,
do something new?
you're telling me.
So that's a good segue.
Well, no, yeah.
But for
here
somebody
I
with
am.
chops, somebody with chops like you come from the fashion industry, you're like, the drywall is going to give you a rude awakening, like, pal. Like, you think you know how to sell shit. Welcome to the drywall industry.
Yeah, well, yeah. You know what? I was obviously, for a guy that was seasoned. I opened a restaurant. It was successful. I wanted to get back into something where I could interact with people, other than hearing about them burping or what wine. I was always into food and wine, and so
Okay.
my travel really helped with that. And I opened up this tapas bar called Bodega. And it was, and our moniker on our t-shirts for our servers was small plates, big drinks. It was in Norfolk, Virginia. It was an
Love
area
it.
where they had no idea what was going on. We had this brick facade, old warehouse building that I built this New York bar. And
Okay.
I had this restaurant, and I knew all these guys because I'd always gone out to dinner, and they were, all these chefs were my friends.
Okay.
On my downtime. When I come in from New York, I go to my buddy's place. It's called the Lucky Star. He and his girl were chef and proprietor, and
Okay.
I just would listen to them while I'd have a couple of cocktails, and I met all these guys. And so I was looking for something to do after I sold my business, because when Ralph went public and my father decided he wanted out for another whole reason,
Sure.
I didn't want to sell the business, but I was outnumbered, and
Okay.
wasn't I wasn't savvy enough to go find investors, because
Sure, sure.
I was running a business. I took our business, I want to say, from, let's say, 10 million to 45 million
Okay.
in like 2 years.
Okay.
That's where my dad and I clashed, because all of a sudden I'd gone to school, I learned all the stuff, and I saw where he was stuck.
Okay.
And I saw where and Ralph saw where he was stuck. Sorry. It was just one of those things where it's time for the young to take over. And I was the
But
lion.
you opted just to sort of get out, exit at that
Well,
point.
eventually.
Okay.
So I basically took over we started the business in 79.
Okay.
By 89, I was now president and running the company.
Okay.
I was the CEO. My dad was chairman, but that was it was, I don't want to go into anything that sounds
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
uh, that it doesn't sound cool.
It wouldn't be a first time that father and son butted heads, especially in a
I
large.
can tell you, I love him. I love him without a doubt. I would do anything to have him back. And
Yeah, yeah,
he and I fought like two lions, and the old lion wound up getting scratched.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
and I'm not
Very
necessarily
cool.
proud of it, but it had to be done because we were stuck. We were stuck. But when you got the premier designer name in the world at the time, and you're seeing that you can't get out of your own way because your dad is getting afraid of spending the money to make it happen, and all of a
Sure.
sudden, things were becoming computerized. I'm talking, our biggest fight was like in '87 or '88 over spending $40,000 to get online
Yeah.
at a time where I knew we needed to be ahead. I knew that if we were going to do business with Bloomingdale's or Neiman's or Saks or any of these
Yeah.
stores, we needed EDI. Nobody even knew about
Yeah.
barcodes. And I had drinks with a guy, and he was telling me about it, and I go, "That's the future, automated replenishment. You
Yeah.
sell one, it automatically reorders. What a frigging concept! It was not around. Everybody
Yeah.
would do manual inventories. They would get to. I mean, it was like, compared to now, it was like slow motion, baby. It was like,
Yeah.
and I saw we could jump on this, and we weren't going to compromise anything, but just be more efficient. So $40,000 was a big investment, and I took over, and I wanted to hire a whole new sales team because
Yeah.
we had guys that were, I don't know, I don't know what they were doing, but they weren't doing what I wanted them to do. And
For whatever reason that you had a shift at that point in time, you sold whatever,
well,
and
wait a minute, but let me just tell you,
okay.
here's the adage: you got if you want to make money, you got to spend money,
Yeah.
but you got to spend it in the right places. So I went out and got a great VP of sales. He was making more in salary than any of us in salary.
Yeah.
I knew it was the investment we had to make. And he knew somebody that could come in and be his right arm. And that means I had sales. I needed to find somebody to help me with merchandising. I mean, if I wanted to go past where we were, I couldn't be the only guy that made the deals or
Yeah.
did the research or relied on or made the products come to life. I had to have partners. So
Yeah.
I built a customer service staff, a product development staff, a design staff. I had
Yeah.
all of these things that we didn't have.
Okay.
And it was freaking my father out because
Yeah.
he's, all right, let's call Harry, and Harry will go and he'll send that out to the customer. Bullshit. We can't do that anymore. So we went from a 8,000 square foot facility to a 72,000 square foot facility. And believe me, I filled that bitch up.
Yeah.
Well, not just me, but the team. But I would have everybody together. And now it becomes popular to have these group meetings, whatever. I knew we had to all be on the same page. I knew everybody had to feel included. I paid good. I paid good bonuses. I paid everything. I wanted everybody to be solid. I hate the Dallas Cowboys, but one thing I respected was when they got to the line in the '90s. It was like a machine, that front line that protected Aikman and created holes for Emmitt Smith. It
Uh-huh.
was like a well-oiled machine. That's how we needed. I saw that's what we needed to be. And I
Yeah.
didn't have that as a reference, but I'm telling you so you can assimilate what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. But I had this vision, and it
Yeah.
was so exciting. It was so exciting. And because I started to see it work. And you can
Yeah.
imagine when we started seeing the sales roll in and just things, I mean, I was going like, wow. And I just was going crazy. And then my dad became a cheerleader instead of a weight. But we had to have that big fight. We had to have it. It just happened. It happened. And I love him and I respect him for being able to see it and letting me be graceful at some point.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't graceful initially. I'll tell you. I mean, I was brutal.
So you did push beyond this a business disagreement with your father. You continued to build the business, but then there was a segue between the business and then this tapas bar, right?
Oh, yeah. So I've sold this business. I had just built this beautiful house in Virginia. It's 8,000 square feet. And a couple of guys come over and said, Granby Street, this area is in Norfolk is undergoing this big revitalization, and they need restaurants, and they have this MacArthur Center, which is a brand new mall that opened up. It was state of the art for Norfolk, Virginia. I wish I could say it was doing well now, but anyway, we were the first restaurant on what became Restaurant Row. It's a destination place now. But at the time, the police, would be riding on bicycles just to keep some of the bad element away. Because it was a real risky deal, but we did it. And we would have it lined up. We would have 6 deep at the bar. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That was great. But that wasn't doing it for me. So I came home, I was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have enough to retire, but I can kind of go for a little bit, but I got to do something. And I'm sure I'm driving my wife and my kids crazy. And so I moved my family out of Manhattan in '99 because I couldn't have my son, who was 3 years old at the time, Sam. I couldn't have him grow up in the city. I wanted him to have a yard. So we moved to New Jersey.
Okay.
And so Sam is now, fast forward a little bit, it's 2002. I got stuck in Hong Kong for 9/11, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm taking Sam to a soccer game, and I've met all these guys, and I'm trying to be a soccer dad, and I've always was an athlete, but I never really coached much except pickup games, whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm also a little vociferous, to put it mildly. I get a little enthusiastic when my boys running down or my girls are running down the field, hopping around.
Oh, so
this guy tells me, look, I need some advice. I have a fire suppression business. I do all the sprinklers in all these buildings. I'm thinking about buying a company, and I want you to look at it for me, and I want you to tell me what you think.
Okay.
So it turned out it was the Drywall Tape Company. I think it was called Duratape Corp.
Weird.
Duratape Corp.
You get approached all of a sudden out of the blue by somebody that wants to sell you a drywall tape company.
Well, no, he didn't want to sell it to me. He was going to buy it.
Okay.
He just wanted me to give him advice.
Okay.
I mean, I got along with the guy. I guess he thought I knew something about something. I don't know.
Oh, as my grandfather used to say, a thing or two about a thing or two.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe. Anyway, so I said to the guy, I said, I'll take a look. So I looked at it, and I saw some number discrepancies that I didn't think were cool. I didn't understand the product. I didn't know the product.
Yeah.
And then he says, well, I want you to come over there, and I want you to look at the setup.
Okay.
So I went over there with him. He says, I don't know. He says, I'm not sure if I want to do this. I have a business consultant I want to run this by. He says, what do you think? I said, I don't know the size of the industry. I don't know any of these things, but it looks like to me this place needs a lot of policing, and for the number that they wanted, it needed. So I'm fastidious about a clean environment.
You're coming from like the fashion industry and restaurant industry into the shit world of drywall. Welcome.
Well, but dude, I'm seeing a manufacturer that's got more dust than a mop. I mean,
have you've been to drywall distribution shops? Like you've seen some, like, it's like, are you kidding me?
They're cleaner than this place was. This place had more shit. I've never seen such crap.
Yeah.
Useless crap. It's all over everywhere. It's so disorganized. I said, I can't do this without a flashlight. I couldn't see.
Okay.
I said, how are these people working? And I'm seeing all the lights are out and all this stuff. These guys, I think this was a cover for them.
Okay.
That's what I thought at the time. And I told him, I said, if you clean this place up and turn it like a business, it looks like there's some kind of foundation here, but I need to see the client, the customers. So I looked at the clients, saw what they were doing. I said, it doesn't look like they're doing much of anything. There's no promotion of the product. There's no marketing.
Right.
I said, is there a market? And then I guess I looked online and I saw.
What was this company trying to do at the time? Sell tape? Sell a drywall paper tape?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were trying,
and they had an association with a company called Wallboard Tool that had. Yeah. Remember the tape that had the metal running up and down it?
Yeah.
Well, they would also sell a couple of rolls of that here and there.
Okay, so they're competing in a market with like maybe one or two other paper tape competitors in the entire market, right?
No. You got to remember, USG is making tape. National Gypsum is making tape. There's a few others that were out there. They were huge.
Yeah.
They were huge. So
why would you even try to compete in that space?
Because I don't know the market. I don't know that market. So then I had to do some research. I saw how many wall boards being sold. Then I saw US Gypsums out there, whatever. But then I also saw that there could be some possibilities. So I told him, I said, if you were going to buy this, you're going to buy this because you have manufacturing capacity for a product, and you could make a different product or make a better product.
Okay.
Or expose it. I said, I don't know all the price points, but I'm quite sure there is a point of production that you got to start being able to turn a profit. I said, and I don't think you can exist just on this product, but it could be a foundation. And then I left it. I walked away. A month later, the guy calls me, says, Lee, somebody approached me to buy my fire suppression business. I'm going to sell. And I'm going to buy another guy's business. And I thank you for your time with the drywall, drywall tape evaluation. I'd like to pay you for that, your time. And if you're interested, they want to talk to you. I said, well, I'm not interested. The company who was selling to this guy wanted to talk to me.
Okay. All right.
And I said, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in this friggin' cockamamie business. These guys
about possibly buying the business.
I assume that's what it was about at the time.
All right.
But at the time, I'm going back in that time, and I'm saying that's what I thought.
Okay.
So another couple of weeks go by. They had wanted some ridiculous number from this guy, and I just told them. So they called me again. Would you come over and talk to us? I lived in Milburn, which is about 20 minutes away from Bloomfield, but I didn't know how to get there. I have difficulty getting from my bathroom to my bed without a line. So sure. I'm going, I don't even remember how I got to your place other than this guy drove me. So I said, you know what? I really don't want to meet with you because I'm not interested. And I don't like the way you run your business. I just, there's some possibilities. Well, we want to talk to you about the possibilities. So I said, all right. eventually I went there,
God,
and
this guy must have been quite a salesman to get you out there.
no, I kind of felt sorry for him. And to tell you, and to tell you the
This
truth,
poor guy.
I had cabin fever.
You're like, you're just like, they caught you at a good time, is
Yeah,
what
I'm going.
happened.
I mean, I was a little bummed with this whole deal with the English thing going down,
Yeah.
And I said, all right, I'll come talk to you.
Yeah.
Because one thing I don't know if I've come across this, but I believe in possibility.
Sure.
And if I could see a vision, or that I can come up with a path.
Yeah.
And I had no desire to be in this business
No.
before. None. As a matter of fact, when I eventually bought the business, people that knew me called me up going, "What the fuck are you doing?"
Yeah. Yeah. As you tell the story, me being in this industry, I'm like, no way.
But I saw when I was in there, I remember seeing a something having to do with I saw a spray can of glue.
Okay.
Something you would do with setting up a vision board, maybe.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I said, "Holy shit! These guys have to use this compound. They got to wipe the compound down.
Yeah.
They got to wait for it to dry.
Yes.
Then they got to put on this tape, and the tape is not easy to put on, right?
And no, it's a bitch.
This is fucked up. This industry, have they
Yeah.
lost their minds?"
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
That's when I got this idea of putting adhesive on the tape and figuring a way of getting it up quicker. Not sure how I'm going to do it yet,
Right.
but so there's several things.
Yeah, but okay, I've got some
So
questions.
you see
I've
these
got
things.
questions.
Wait a minute.
You're not even in the industry.
You're right. You're right.
You don't know nothing.
Well, wait a minute. I know I don't. So, well, I do know only what I did research for this guy.
Okay.
You know, I'm questioning the guys that are making the tape. I'm going, how does this work again, man? I want to make sure I got it right. And they told me, and I didn't say a word. But while I'm walking around, they're sealing boxes with this machine that you press on it, and this tape spurts out. It goes over water, and they're sealing the boxes. And
In the same factory?
Yeah, in the same factory. So,
Okay.
and I saw the can of spray, and all of a sudden I'm seeing the rolls of tape, and all of a sudden it's just like, holy shit,
Yeah.
there could be something here.
Yeah.
So I put these guys, I dragged this thing out, this purchase, for quite a while, because while I was considering it,
Yeah.
I went to patent attorneys.
Okay. And you were researching maybe the viability of the concept.
Right. If I could find a way, which I now knew that I could, once I saw that machine with the tape,
Yeah.
which had been in my factory also,
Yeah.
but it was so all of a sudden I just saw the tape coming out, and I saw
Yeah. That's really cool.
and so you see these TV shows where you go back and
Yeah.
so this is how the thought was coming.
The lightning bolt. That was a lightning bolt moment for you.
Yeah, but then I said, oh, now I got to sell it. So I did all, and I wasn't sure, but I figured if anybody could do it, I could. And I had a guy, a good friend of mine, who was an electrical contractor. And so I had him give me an assessment of the machines. And by the time I finished with these bozos, that I bought it at 30 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
Because the machines weren't operating the way they should.
Yeah.
they had things in place. It just didn't maintain them. It's like they didn't want to succeed.
Yeah.
They were a couple of they weren't Italian guys.
Well, you're coming from an industry of a higher level of quality, competency, like all this high, more money for sure to a suppressed industry like drywall, and you're like, well, God, there's all kinds of opportunity here.
Yeah, so I figured if I could save a day, I wasn't even realizing what I was talking about.
Sure.
But I started thinking all these things all the way down the line, how it would save the guy that was working. Now,
Right.
I didn't realize I was going to run into a couple of issues that I wound up running into, as far as union guys don't want to go faster. Nobody's interested in speeding up the process. Some of these guys, they did want to. Everybody wants to save money.
Yeah. Welcome to the drywall industry, Lee Goldman.
Holy cow! You want to talk about a gut punch? Here I am, all ready to go. I have now gotten all this. I have two. There's two machines. I have totally refurbished these machines. I can't. I don't know how much money I spent.
Okay, so your research did not lead so far down the path that you could envision these marketing challenges that you ran into. Let's just say that you could not have possibly envisioned the sales challenges.
No,
like you're treating it just like any industry. Hey, man, I got this new idea. It's gonna go gangbusters.
Right. Well, yeah. I was naive in that respect, but
Yeah.
I will say that one of the first persons to believe in what I was doing was a fellow that's no longer with us. That was a friend of mine. I just found out recently that he passed. His name is Doug Holmberg of Grabber. He was a visionary, and he was their product guy.
Okay.
And that's how. And it was from Doug Holmberg that I met my buddy Kevin Bush. Kevin Bush is how I met Heath.
Okay. I like it. This is a good stopping point, right? This is a cliffhanger. Part 2, the wet and stick. Your stories your stories are great, man.
So are we done?
Yeah, we'll talk about we'll take off there.
So yesterday, I like to be prepared somewhat, and my memory, it was so disappointing how this all ended, and
yeah,
and my marriage ended. My son,
fuck that, Lee. We're gonna resurrect it, dude.
No, but wait. My son got really sick.
Yeah,
my wife and I split. The business failed.
Yeah,
because I was so down about all this. I just went through and threw shit away.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say went crazy, but I was so damn depressed about the whole thing. Here I was living this charmed life, and everything I touched turned to gold. And then one thing after another just ate me up. And I went back yesterday, and I kept a file in my Yahoo account called Duratape. And I started going through the reason I kept sending you things.
Yeah.
Because I went through all my attachments to emails and presentations I made, and
kind of bittersweet that the Drywall Podcast has resurrected these archived thoughts and for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, I listen, I can't tell you that I haven't sat there with a drink in my hand or sitting on a beach and thought, that should have worked.
Yeah.
But not often, but every once in a while, I will sit and I'll go, I've had quite a life.
Yeah.
And I've taken a shot on a bunch of things, and
Yeah.
some of them should have worked better than they did.
Yeah.
Um, that I went from a guy that didn't know anything to a guy that knew a lot.
Yeah.
And I look back, I made some great contacts. I had it all going. I just ran out of dough, and I ran out of time to explain it to anybody.
Yeah.
My boy got sick. It took years to get him back.
Yeah.
And I knowingly sacrificed my business. All I did was make sure that anybody that had product that was not up to snuff got compensated in some way. They may not be happy about it, or they may not have been happy about it, but I did right. I did as right as I could.
I
Nothing,
like it.
by the way, one of the things that irritated me about Kevin's broadcast with you
Sure.
is, and I told him this, I said, first of all, there was no old age home. I have the article. I said, but nothing fell off the wall. It bubbled because
Okay.
because
Okay.
the coder, sorry, the coder skipped. Yeah, it must have had an issue with the machine.
Fucking
And
glitch. Who cares?
it was a glitch. But then it was a huge order. I had truckloads.
Yeah.
Nick, I'm telling you, I bet the ranch on it. I had
Yeah.
product going to Spain. I had product going to Australia. I had product going through Grabber. There was so much. I had everything riding on it because we were on a roll. I had mesh tape that was coming out of my ass. I had the best mesh tape there was. I know they have these other variations now, but as far as mesh tape went, I went to China and I developed the right thickness of strand, the right glue to go on that tape. I had it packed in a way that it was not going to ever have a problem. I mean, I can't tell you how many different aspects of this. If I'm going to be in this business, I'm going to be the best in this business.
Yeah.
And I was just getting ready to do a lot of different things when we had this problem. And when I took it to the coder, he said, "Well, it may be, but you can't prove it, and we're not doing anything about it, and that's the way it is." And I mean, the paper is expensive, the freight's expensive, the coating was paid for, it's expensive,
Yeah.
all these things. I mean, I just, I wasn't big enough.
It
I
took the
couldn't,
wind. It took the wind out of your sail.
and plus, my kid's dying,
Yeah.
or I'm trying to save my kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just, I developed this blaze blocker, and I had it they had a hospital in Long Island that I had them tape it, use the tape, and it was a hit.
Right.
They even had a leak above one of the joints of water that went through the floor. It didn't come off. I had the right thing. I had the tape that was buffed just right. I went for spark perforated. Their sparks were just right. I had the creases just right. I had everything just right. And these fuckers
Yeah.
screwed up. And when I tried to come back with that, I had these other fellas.
God, they just didn't want to. And you explain, like, hey, man, this thing is rolling. We just got to fix this fucking thing. Let's work it out. Can we do a payment plan? How can we make this work?
So, wait a second. Now, we also are talking about the housing crisis.
Okay.
So that's something you're missing.
So there was a third prong.
Well, you remember the housing crisis of 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13? Yeah. Well, that was right in the middle of it.
Okay.
So got the housing crisis. My son's dying. I got product that should be rolling, but now I've got a glitch there. I'm I mean, not just me, for God's sakes. It was everybody got hit by that.
Well, it was another aspect of why the wet and stick didn't fly. So there were multiple circumstances involved. It doesn't mean that it was a bad idea. There were just
No, I know
there
it.
was a lot of factors contributing.
If I'm giving you the impression that it was a bad idea,
No,
that wrong impression.
we wouldn't be talking if I thought it was a bad idea, because I keep hearing about this wet and stick. I'm like, well, that's it. I'm an idea guy.
I know.
Like,
I can see that. I can see that we think alike.
tape that just goes. You don't need mud. You don't need a bazooka. Like, seems like a pretty good idea. Wait, only one job failed? Well, that's not enough.
Well,
I need more. I need more.
That's not entirely true.
Okay.
That's not entirely true. It was one job that was major influence for Grabber, but that the same batch went to Australia.
Okay.
Same batch.
And you had to call those guys and be like, hey, whoa, don't use that product. We had an issue.
Well, no, I didn't. I didn't know it was through the whole run. I thought it was just one roll, one master roll.
Okay.
So I would order a truckload of 20 master rolls. That's why I started by telling you how the machines worked. So I would have 4,800 feet on a roll.
Okay.
That makes a lot. And when you're talking about 6 feet wide, you're talking about a lot of tape out of a roll.
Yeah.
I'm not a truckload or anything, but I mean, you're talking about maybe a pallet and a half.
Yeah.
And if there's 40 pallets to a truck,
that's a lot of material.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I also, it's about product presentation. I mean, I went through this whole thing with Hyde. But before that, I mean, I was working on something with Lafarge.
Well, the beauty of a part two is that we get to get more into your challenges in the industry. We've got a background, we've got a basis now for where Lee Goldman came from, and sort of a little teaser on on the wet and stick. We can really do a deep dive into marketing in the drywall space, the housing crisis, the challenges. Well, but you had a shabby
shell
thing that you bought. You refurbished these two. You invested a lot of money.
Oh yeah, millions.
All right, we're gonna stop there. Lee Goldman.
No, I'm serious.
I know.
You don't just hop on a plane and go to China to develop shit and not cost you money. Think about all the boxes that you make for your product.
No, we do bottles.
Okay, you do bottles. So I had to do boxes. So I did them for Grabber. I had Grabber boxes. I had generic wet and stick boxes. I had tape boxes for just plain tape. I had mesh boxes for mesh. I mean, I do boxes for shipping, but like I bootstrapped it all. So like my whole marketing model is completely different, and the caution was already built in with this industry. Like, I didn't realize it. I kept it secret for 10 years. Like, I didn't want to let anybody know because they'd steal it. They could care less. Like, they don't care. Like, I started, it's like I have to, now what I've realized now, how to market in this space, like that knowledge I could take to a product like the wet and stick and be like, oh, you got to soft play this thing big time. You like slow play, because you got these giants. Well, I did slow play.
There's these corporate fucking giants that are just, they own everything. And if you're not playing in their game, they don't care. They're not going to help you. We've been doing it this way for years. We got truckloads of mud and sheetrock going out the door.
Yeah, and they treated drywall tape like it was a piece of piss.
They treat mud like it's a piece of piss.
No, they
It's
make money on their mud though. They
$1 a box. It's a
I don't
commodity.
know about that. Well, I don't know what they make now, but I can tell you it was all about selling their mud and their board. That's all they cared about. They didn't care
Oh,
about
right,
tape.
right. Well, yeah, you're stepping on the mud toes a little bit.
Well,
So,
yeah, yeah. So they cared about they listen. They would practically give away the tape, plain tape, which is why I had to go into another direction. Now, I had a Europe business. Europe still believed that spark perforated tape was the bee's knees. Australia felt the same way. South America felt the same way.
okay.
Here, they could give a shit. But I sold product in Costa Rica. I sold product in Australia. I sold it in England, France, Spain. Uh, Never got into Italy, which was a shame. But anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, but they couldn't duplicate because I also what I didn't get into aside from just the spark perforating deal that I perfected the sanding of the tape. So
Okay.
it has a nap to it. It's a really it's a very subtle nap, which
Okay.
is great for the mud. You have to understand the paper. So I had to learn paper. I know it's crazy, but I had to
Yeah.
learn paper, and I had to understand why this paper. It was because of the tensile strength. I had studies done on the tensile strength difference between regular paper tape and wet and stick. I went underneath the hood in every possible way because I wanted to be the best at all of this shit. And
Yeah.
I knew it would take some time, but I knew if it hit, then I would never have that it would be like an automatic bingo.
There's something to be said for that. And growing slow in this industry has been the right way to do it. Because if you want to,
Yeah.
like the challenges that you ran into when you jump the gun and you go full bore all at once, one little thing happens, it can really like just cripple you.
Look, before I started to cook, I invested 6 years.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
It's not
this was not a run and gun.
okay.
This was but I was trying to hold on to, so I had to do something to create capital.
Yeah.
So that's when I developed the mesh tape
Okay.
while I'm doing the wet and stick,
Okay.
and I'm selling paper tape. So I'm trying to keep busy on every front. And I know that there's got to be accessories that go with these things.
Right.
So one of my first coups was DAP. I private labeled mesh tape for DAP. And,
Okay. You
and
use an existing brand.
well, they wanted to offer mesh tape in this. I think guess it was through Sherwin-Williams and through a couple other stores.
Okay.
So I I heard they were looking.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how I heard, but I had just perfected this tape. I just got my resources together in China, and now I have the bee's knees of tape, and I'm supplying grabber truckloads of this shit in different colors. I don't know how I heard this, but I did. So I went down to Baldwin. I walked in. I said, I got what you need. I got it at the right price. They said, fine, let's put a proposal together. I did. I'm now I've got containers coming to that I'm reshipping. They're coming to me. I developed originally DAP supplied the boxes. Then I made the boxes in China, and then I would ship them product right directly.
Cool.
But unfortunately, they changed buyers. Somebody had somebody in their pocket,
Yeah.
and I lost, and that business went away. But I realized that's how it works.
Yeah.
So somebody had a relationship with this buyer that was in the mesh tape industry, and I think it was somebody in Saint Gobain or someplace like that. Anyway, it
Interesting.
doesn't matter. But that's how I sustained business while I perfected what I had out there. I had to figure a way. I hated mesh tape, by the way. I'd always talk it down
Yeah.
because I thought it was a crap product.
People in the industry don't like mesh on the whole. Just my interpretation. Fibofuse is a great new tape that's out. I'm sure you've heard of it.
I remember when they first were coming out, they didn't have it right.
It's cool shit. It's cool shit.
I actually made some of that.
I've used it. The fibrous, the way the mud saturates it, and the way
it makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
It's cool stuff.
Yeah.
I have 2 6-foot rolls in my truck for like going over like wallpaper or like brick.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got great purpose. No, but you know what? I had tremendous respect for those people that can handle artistic stuff. And to me, drywalling is an art. To take the concept of a level straight wall that's not there originally, and you've got to have it but piece by piece and have it match. That's something that I couldn't do.
Yeah, it takes a few years to get good at.
You give me a 2-foot area, I'll tape it and spackle that bitch like a motherfucker. But if I had to do a whole seam, no way.
Yeah,
that's years and years of on-time experience.
Yeah, and it's hard work. It's laborious.
I actually had a union school in California that was teaching how to use wet and stick.
Okay.
Yeah, and I had some guys I was in contact with. They were all over it, man. Anytime they would, you should see them line up if I was at a trade show. These guys would line up. All they want to do is talk shit. Well, what happens is you don't know you don't know until you see it, and then you go, God damn, it should have been that way all along.
Right.
I mean. You saw it and you go, what the fuck?
I remember I was thinking this morning about the first time the first iPhone that I touched. It just blew my fucking mind. And I knew I was like, I want it. I want that. Like, I didn't even know how to use a computer. You had to have a computer to use the iPhone. I didn't even have a computer, but like that Steve Jobs, he knew.
Hey,
he knew.
I remember the first I told you I did my belts in England. The first fax I bought 3 of them. I was in New York, our factory was in Virginia, our distribution was in Virginia, and our main belt factory that we're doing business with was in England. I sent them this machine. They go, what the fuck are we going to do with this? I said, you find a way of plugging that bitch in and give me your telephone number, and I'm going to show you what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was like revolutionary.
Yeah. Well, this is the longest.
I gotta go.
This is the longest I've been on a Zoom call thus far. So congratulations for that. We've surpassed any interviews prior. But tomorrow, same time, we'll take off on the wet and stick.
All right. Well, yeah. Just do me a favor. Just decide where you want to begin, and you know enough now that you can kind of control a little bit. So there's definite phases of this whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, because once I got rid of my machinery, I then had to work with other people to get the things made. That was that's a story I don't know that you want. But
we'll talk about all that tomorrow. All right, okay. Lee, you have a good day. We'll talk soon.
All right, rock on. Nice talking with you.
Yeah, bye. Special thanks to Lee Goldman for being with us on the Drywall Podcast today. Tune in next week for part 2 as we flesh out the manufacturing of the wet and stick, the blaze blocker, and this saturator tool, and how a couple of bad circumstances led to the Wet and Stick demise. Shout out to Columbia Tools for once again sponsoring the Drywall Podcast in the months of January and February. We certainly appreciate you guys for that. If you're ready to step up your drywall finishing game and unleash the fury that is Columbia Tools and join their family, visit the website at www.columbiatools.com or their Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube pages, and check out the online community there. Guests of the Drywall Podcast will receive a sweet swag bucket from our friends over at CSRbuildingsupplies.com. Go check out that website. They have everything that you might need for all your drywall finishing purposes. Thank you so much for joining me on the Drywall Podcast today. This story of Lee Goldman is a fantastic one, and I encourage you to tune in next Friday as we launch headfirst into part 2 of Lee Goldman's story about the Wet and Stick. But until then, I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and remember, keep drywalling.